Chanukah, oh Chanukah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with, latkes to eat.
Happy Chanukah. I'm Rabbi Stan Levin.
And I'm Rabbi Yaffa-Shira Sultan. Yalalai, 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 yalalai. 22 centuries ago, when Israel was under the rule of the empire of Alexander the Great, one particular leader, Antiochus IV, decided to force the pace of Hellenization, forbidding Jews to practice their religion, and setting up a temple in Jerusalem with a statue of Zeus Olympus. This was too much to bear, and a group of Jews, the Maccabees, fought for their religious freedom, winning a stunning victory against the most powerful army of the ancient world. And after 3 years, they reconquered Jerusalem, rededicated the temple, and relit the menorah with the one cruse of undefiled oil they found among the wreckage. And this is the holiday of Chanukah that we celebrate tonight. This celebration, it was one of the most stunning military achievements of the ancient world. It was, as we say in our prayers, a victory of the few over the many, the weak over the strong. It is summed up in the wonderful line from the prophet Zechariah, not by might, nor by strength, but by my spirit, by spirit alone, says God. The Maccabees had neither might nor strength, neither weapons nor numbers, but they had a double portion of the Jewish spirit that longs for freedom and is prepared for it, to fight for it. Never believe that a handful of dedicated people can change the world inspired by faith. They can. The Maccabees did then. So can we today. So this is our Hanukkah celebration for the Riderwood Jewish community. One of the first things that we do in this tradition to celebrate Hanukkah is to light the Chanukiah, which is right behind me. We light it before the Shabbat candles. So why is that? There's a very particular order to this celebration, to the lighting of the candles. Once we light the Shabbat candles, we are commanded to not light further lights, to not use electricity, to not drive. And so in fact, we need to light the Chanukiah candles first, and then mark the beginning of Shabbat with the Shabbat candles. And tonight, being the second night of Hanukkah, we will be lighting not only the Shabbos candle, which is the helper candle, but 2 more candles to mark the lighting. And as we light, we add candles. I filled the entire menorah here. So we're going to light our candles, and we light the Hanukkah candles first. We add a candle each night, moving from right to left. But when it comes to lighting the candles, first we light the shamas, the helper candle, and we light the last candle from the left over to the right. So for the new night, so for tonight, we're going to light 2 candles for 2 nights. I'm going to light the second candle first, and then the first candle. So I invite you to do this at home as well. and feel free to sing out for any of the prayers and songs that we're doing. Some of you may have emailed to you a song sheet. And on the first page of the song sheet has the blessings for the Hanukkah. It has blessings for Hanukkah. So I'm going to chant the first blessing, then Rabbi Levin will chant the second blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lechadlik ner shel Chanukah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim hahem b'azman hazeh. Oh, by the way, we only do the Shehechianu on the first night of Hanukkah.
So being the second night and Friday night, I will now light the Shabbat candles. We gather in the light of Shabbat, we take a deep breath, we let go of any stressors from the week, and we welcome in some peace. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lechadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
This evening, we are going to be celebrating both Chanukah and Shabbat. So it's going to be a blended service. And now, Rabbi Yaffa-Shira will do Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Chasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh.
As we welcome the ministering angels, we wish upon them Shalom Aleichem, peace upon you. We also wish peace upon all who watch this video. We'll now do our call to prayer, the Baruch Hu, on page 50 of our Siddur. It is also, you have a page 50 designation in your handout if you're working off of that. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMivorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vaed.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, whose word brings on the evening. With wisdom, you open heaven's gates, and with understanding, you make the ages pass and the seasons alternate. Your will controls the stars as they travel through the skies. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light. You cause day to pass and bring on the night, separating day from night. You command the hosts of heaven. May the living and eternal God rule us always to the end of time. We praise you, O God, whose word makes evening fall. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amchavta Torah mitzvot chukim mishpatim otanu limadita Al ken Adonai Eloheinu v'shachbenu v'kumenu nasiach b'kukecha v'nismat b'divrei Toratecha Uva-mitzvotecha le'olam voed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvehem nege yomam v'layla v'avtecha tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ashim kevod malchuto le'olam va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem emet.
If you're standing, please be seated. All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone are God. There is none else, and we are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign. You deliver us from the hand of oppressors and save us from the fist of tyrants. You do wonders without number, marvels that pass our understanding. You give us our life. By your help, we survive all who seek our destruction. You did wonders for us in the land of Egypt, miracles and marvels in the land of Pharaoh. You led your people Israel out forever to serve you in freedom. When your children witnessed your power, they extolled you and gave you thanks. Willingly, they enthroned you. And full of joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang this song. Micha mocha Bo'elim Adonai, mi kamocha, nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef ele, Nora Tehillah Osefele. Who is like you, eternal one, among the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, doing wonders? In their escape from the sea, your children saw your sovereign might displayed. This is my God, they said. The eternal will reign forever and ever. And it has been said, the eternal one delivered Jacob and redeemed us from the land of one stronger than ourselves. We praise you, O God, Redeemer of Israel. Hashkivenu, our evening prayer. Grant that we may lie down in peace, eternal God, and raise us up, O sovereign, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, and for your name's sake, be our help. Shield us from hatred and plague. Keep us from war and famine and anguish. Subdue our inclination to evil. O God, our guardian and helper, our gracious and merciful sovereign, give us refuge in the shadow of your wings. O guard our coming and our going, that now and always we have life and peace. We praise you, O God, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people, Israel, over Jerusalem, and may I add, over people everywhere on this planet. And we affirm by saying, Amen. So what is Hanukkah? It's not referenced in the Jewish Bible, the Tanakh, although there are some who say it's alluded to in the book of Daniel with the war of the East and the West, but that's a bit of a stretch. What we know about Hanukkah comes from extra biblical sources. The Talmud has basically 8 lines of text, and those are all in the tractate called Shabbat. I'll read you a little bit of it. It says, what is Hanukkah? The rabbis have expounded, beginning with the 25th of Kislev, 8 days of Hanukkah are observed, during which no eulogies are delivered, nor is fasting permitted. For when the Greeks entered the sanctuary, they defiled all the holy oils used for the menorah in the temple. And when the Hashmonean house prevailed and vanquished them, they searched and found only one remaining jar of oil within the Kohen Gadol's seal. Although it contained only enough oil to burn for 1 day, a miracle occurred, and the oil burned for 8 days. A year later, the rabbis designated these days as Yamim Tovim, on which praise and thanksgiving were to be said. That's all it says. There's discussion of who lights the candles, how many Chanukiot you have in the house, where you place it, but in terms of the historicity, that's all we have, the miracle. The rabbis of the Talmud did not even talk about the conquest of the Greeks who had controlled our land. Probably was a political decision that they left it out, because after actually the Hashmonean dynasty that descended from Mattathias, what they did was not exactly according to Jewish thought. They merged the priesthood with the kinghood. That didn't play well, certainly with the rabbis of the Talmud. What we do know about the history comes from actually Christian literature, or even Apocrypha, the first and second books of Maccabees, which is in the Christian Bible. And there we have the narrative about Judah the Hammer, the Maccabee. Oh, by the way, it may be Midrash, but I want to share it with you. Maccabee, I was taught, could be an acronym for Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai, who is like you among the gods. Adonai. But Judah the Hammer, their conquest with superior military strength was amazing. The Greeks were ousted, their pagan relics and practices removed from the temple in Jerusalem, and Judaism is restored, at least under the Hashmonean dynasty, until the Romans come and conquer the Promised Land. Josephus is our last source. He's a chronicler of life in the Promised Land in the 1st century of the Common Era. He makes reference to the practice of Hanukkah in his book of Jewish Antiquities. He talks about what is already in Maccabees 1 and 2. He says that Judea celebrated it for 8 days, and he was the one who named it the Festival of Lights. In Maccabees, it's called Chanukah, dedication. So that is the historical basis of Hanukkah, and eventually the military and the oil miracle were combined, and that's how we celebrate Hanukkah today. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Yaffa-Shira will lead us on Ma'ot Tzor.
Ma'ot Tzor, otherwise known as Rock of Ages, is found in your handout. It is number 1 in your handout. I don't know if you can see that. Ma'ot Tzor Yeshuati Lechana elishabeach, tikon betefilati, vesham todan isabeach, lietachin matbeach, mitzarcham nabeach, Azigmor beshir mismor, Chanukah tamizbeach, Azigmor beshir mismor, Chanukah tamizbeach. Rock of ages, let our song praise thy saving power. Thou amidst the raging foes wast our sheltering tower. Furious they assailed us, but thine arm availed us, and thy word broke their sword. When our own strength failed us, and thy word broke their sword, when our own strength failed us.
In the Talmud, there's a discussion between the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai on how you light the candles for Hanukkah. Hillel said you light one night the first candle, second night the second, and all the way up to 8. You build from 1 to 8. That was the decision of the house of Hillel. Shammai, on the other hand, said you start with 8 and you diminish them one by one. And his argument was, at Sukkot, you diminish the number of animal sacrifices by 1 over the days of Sukkot. This may be the first link we have between Hanukkah and Sukkot. There are other rabbis and other authors of Jewish antiquities that discuss the fact that when the Romans prohibit us from doing any Torah celebration, we found other ways to do it. And one of the ways was to mask Sukkot as Hanukkah. So there is a direct connect between Sukkot, which is 7 days, plus Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day, and Hanukkah, which is 8 days long.
We look now to number 3 in our handout, to O Hanukkah, O Hanukkah. O Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Sivivon to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. 1 for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. 1 for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. Oh Hanukkah, a festival of joy, a holiday, a jolly day for every girl and boy. Spin the whirling dreidels all week long. Eat the sizzling latkes, sing a happy song now. Light them tonight then, the flickering candles in a row. Retell the wondrous story of God in all God's glory. Dance by the candles' cheering glow. Retell the wondrous story of God in all God's glory, and dance by the candles cheering low. And now in Yiddish, Oy Chanukah, a Yontav Vashena, a listeke, freiliche, nicht noch a Zehner, alle Nacht und Redel, es spielen mir, so de Kessel essen mir geschwinder, zieht Kinder, de Chanukah lichtelig soll jeder besonder besingen dem Wunder und tanzen freilichen Korn. Soll jeder Basunder besingen dem Wunder und tanzen, Freilach und Chor.
So let's discuss the origin of the dreidel, this four-sided top, called dreidel in Yiddish and sevivon in Hebrew, is a device used in a gambling game played during Hanukkah, usually by children. On its successive surfaces, there are four Hebrew letters, the Nun, the Gimel, the Hey, and the Shin. And when you play the game, the Nun, you don't do anything. Gimel, you take all. Hey, you take half of the money or chocolate coins. Shin, you put another coin in the center. There are many legends about the origin of the dreidel. According to one source, who was played over 2,000 years ago at the time of Antiochus, each of the Hebrew letters stood for an enemy of Israel. The Nun, Nebuchadnezzar, which is Babylon. The Gimel, Gog, which represented Greece. The Hey stood for Haman, and the Shin stood for Sair, Rome. Another legend has it that the dreidel was used to teach Torah at a time of Antiochus when it was forbidden. That if anyone saw anyone spinning a dreidel, they would think they were simply gambling. In truth, nobody knows the origin of the dreidel. The word dreidel is from the German drehen, which means to spin. And one could argue that the Jewish use of the dreidel for Hanukkah may be less than 300 years old. We are told that the Hebrew letters are an abbreviation of the phrase, let me get it oriented, Nes, Gadol, Haya, Sham. A great miracle happened there. Although in Israel, it's Nes Gadol Haya Po, a great miracle happened here. But maybe it's really, if it's from the German, the Nun, Nisht, which means you do nothing, Ganza, you take all, Halb, you take half, and Shtetl Ein, you put in. Whether the dreidel is ancient or relatively modern, it's as iconic to Hanukkah as the Chanukiah and potato latkes.
We turn now back to our song sheet, to O Dreidel, which is number 6 in your handout. I have a little dreidel, I made it out of clay, and when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel, I shall play. Oh dreidel, 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 I made it out of clay, and when it's dry and ready, then dreidel I shall play. It has a lovely body with legs so short and thin, and when my dreidel's tired, it drops and then I win. Oh dreidel, 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 I made it out of clay, and when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play. My dreidel's always playful, it loves to dance and spin. A happy game of dreidel, come play now, let's begin. Oh dreidel, 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 I made it out of clay, and when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play.
I don't know about you, Rabbi Yaffa-Shira. I never had a dreidel made out of clay.
Yeah. Me neither.
What I found interesting in my research is we're not the only ones who had a spinning top. Matter of fact, it was documented in the United Kingdom in the 16th century of the Common Era. And by the time, there were no Jews in England at the time. They were often used for Christians at Christmas as a gambling game called totem, or even teetotum, based on the Latin word for all. And even their tops had letters on each side. T for toto, take all, H for half, P for put, and N for do nothing. And those rules seem amazingly similar to the Jewish version. And I bet if we search, we can find dreidel kind of games in all other cultures.
And speaking of other cultures, the Spanish Inquisition took place in 1492, and the Jews either had to convert to Catholicism or leave the country and go into exile. So many Jews who immigrated from Spain into exile speak a language called Ladino. which is an ancient Spanish language, and it is still studied today, although we're not able to easily find anyone who speaks it. But in the last, I think about 20 years, a woman named Flori Jagoda reintroduced Ladino music to the Jewish world. And so if you look at page 2 in your handout, number 7 on your song sheets, you'll see a song called Ocho Candalicas, 8 candles. And so we're going to sing this song. And if you're less familiar with the Ladino that we're singing, which is a mix of Hebrew and Spanish, there is a chorus that repeats several times. So please do join in on whatever part you'd like. Chanukah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Chanukah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Oh, una candalicas, 2 candalicas, 3 candalicas, 4 candalicas, 5 candalicas, 6 candalicas, 7 candalicas, 8 candelas para mí. Muchas fiestas voy a hacer con alegrías y placer. Muchas fiestas voy a hacer con alegrías y placer. Oh, una candalicas, 2 candalicas, 3 candalicas, 4 candalicas, 5 candalicas, 6 candalicas, 7 candalicas, 8 candelas para mí. Los pastelicos voy a comer con las mendricas y la miel. Los pastelicos voy a comer con almendricas y la miel. Oh, una candalicas, 2 candalicas, 3 candalicas, 4 candalicas, 5 candalicas, 6 candalicas, 7 candalicas, 8 candelas para mí.
We've talked about things that are important for Hanukkah, like the Chanukiah, the 9 candlestick candelabrum, which is different from a menorah, which only has 7. We've talked about the dreidel. Now we get to talk about what's really Jewish, food. In the United States and in the West, we eat latkes. And I really think this comes out of the German or Middle European tradition, in an area where there had a lot of potatoes. So I don't know how you grew up, but I grew up with a 4-sided potato shredder. And I used to help my grandmother make latkes, and it doesn't count unless you get some of the skin and fingernails in the latkes. It just seemed to come with it. Latkes made in a food processor just don't have the same texture. The reason a little onion, a little schmaltz put in, and we fry this in oil because oil is the symbol for the holiday, that cruise of oil that lasted 8 days. Well, apparently in Israel, they didn't have a lot of potatoes, but what they did have was wheat. So in Israel, instead of latkes, they eat jelly donuts called sufganiyot. They're powdered donuts that are filled with jelly, and those two are prepared in oil. And that's how they celebrate the holiday of the oil. So those of us from Middle Europe have latkes, and those in Israel have jelly donuts, sufganiyot.
You know, I was always wondering, Rabbi Levin, as a child, how they got the jelly into the donut. It was a silly question. I could never figure it out. But if you go to a grocery store in Israel during Hanukkah, you watch them make it right there. And they have this cone that faces upwards, and they take the donut and they push it down on the cone. Then they have this big lever that shoots the jelly right into the cone, into the donut. I have to tell you, it's probably really obvious for bakers, but it was like this light lit up in my head when I saw them. And now how wonderful it is that you could go into any grocery store in Israel and watch our holy foods, our sacred foods associated with the holidays made right there. You know, it's different than being in the United States or in the diaspora. We don't have as direct a relationship with the traditions and rituals. We have to do it for ourselves. I'd like to invite us now to look at song number 2 in your handouts, which is Mi Yimalel. Mi Yimalel Gvurot Yisrael Otan Mi Yimnei Chen Bechol Dor Yakum Hagibor Goel Ha'am. Mi Yimalel Gvurot Yisrael Otan Mi Yimnei Chen Bechol Dor Yakum Hagibor Goel Ha'am. Shema Vayamim Chahem Bazman Chaseh Maccabi Moshiach Ufodeh Uvyameinu Kolam Yisrael Yitached Yakum Vehigael. Who can tell the things that befell us? Who can count them? In every age a hero or sage came to our aid. Who can retell the things that befell us? Who can count them? In every age a hero or sage came to our aid. Hark, in days of yore in Israel's ancient land, Maccabeus led the faithful band. Now all Israel must as one arise, redeem itself through deed and sacrifice. Mi Yimalel Gvurot Yisrael Otan Mi Yimnei Chen Bechol Dor Yakum Hagibor Goel Ha'am.
And now we think about those in our community who we feel could benefit from a healing prayer, whether for physical, spiritual, psychological, or emotional healing, whether at home or hospice or in a hospital. Yaffa-Shira will now lead us in a healing service.
Mekor Chabracha Leimawotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishebeirachimotenu Mekor Chabracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
This time we include in our healing prayers Henry Plotkin, Joel Shochet, brother of Elise Shochet, Tobias Sultan, the staff dealing with COVID-19, other Riderwood residents, especially those in Arbor Ridge. If there's someone for whom you wish a healing prayer spoken, please, we will be quiet for a moment and allow you to share those names. We will continue with the Elena.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latei gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kachem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר וחיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, let us meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. Recent passings include Bruce Bernstein, Beatrice Lipschutz, and Edward Price. The December yahrzeits include Melvin Adelson, Samuel Friedman, Barbara Lang, Anna Nathan Dreyfus, Sheila Pinsker, Rosette Scheinbein-Koenig, Robert Shion, and Milton Shore. If there are names I have not mentioned, you're still within the Shiva, the first 7 days, or the Shloshim, the first 30 days, or even the first year. Or if the month of December marks an anniversary of a passing of a loved one, please share their name or names. And again, we'll be quiet and allow that to happen. Zichronam Levracha, may their memories be for a blessing. And now the Mourner's Kaddish on page 154, and I will do it slowly. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'yalma Divrach Yerutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'zman Kariv, V'meru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivorach, Leolam Ul'olmei Almaya, Yit Barach, V'yishtabach, V'yit Pa'ar, V'yit Romam, V'yit Naseh, V'yit Hadar, V'yit Aleh, V'yit Halal, Shmei Dekudisha, V'rechu, Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Da'amiran V'yama V'meru, Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'meru, Amen. Osei Shalom V'merumav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'meru, Amen. V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, V'meru, Amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And we affirm by saying, Amen.
So I invite us to think for a moment of the memories from our childhood of lighting the Chanukah menorah, the Chanukiah. There is also another tradition. There is the obligation, the commandment that the menorah should be seen from the outside of our houses looking in. So it was my tradition in my family that every year I would climb under the baby grand in our living room piano and plug in the electric menorah. So if you are going to put your menorah in the window, then just remember that when you add a light, you have to set it up so that it is correct from the outside looking in. So instead of lighting the candles from left to right, you're going to add the candle light, but then when you turn it around so that people can see it from the outside, it is going to be the reverse if you look at it from inside the house. Little confusing, but every year that was my job. And when I would drive through New York City to go and visit my aunts and uncles in the Bronx, we would count menorot. And you know, we see a lot of Christmas lights around this time of year. It is very exciting for a child to be able to count. In New York City, one of the diaspora homelands for the Jewish people, to count all the menorot in the windows. So I want to invite us to look at song number 8 on our song sheets, which is called Chanukah, Chanukah. Chanukah, Chanukah, Hag yafe kol kach, or chaviv misaviv, gile yeled rach. Chanukah, Chanukah, siviv sof sof, sof sof sof, sof sof sof, manayim hatov. Chanukah, Chanukah, Hag yafe kol kach, or chaviv misaviv, gile yeled rach. Chanukah, Chanukah, siviv sof sof, sof sof sof, sof sof sof, manayim v'tov.
And now I would like to do a prayer for our country written by a friend and colleague of mine, Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, who calls herself the Velveteen Rabbi. Matter of fact, she has a website with that name. O God and God of our ancestors, receive our prayer for this land that we love. Pour out your blessing on this nation and its government. Give those who serve our country appreciation for the Torah's principles of justice and peace. Help them to see your face in every constituent. Cultivate in them and in us awareness that we are all one family, obligated to care for each other with compassion. Banish hatred from our hearts and from the hearts of our elected officials. Help us to make this country a light unto the nations. May it be your will, our God and God of our generations, that this nation be a blessing to all who dwell on earth. Help us to enact the words of your prophet, nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they learn war anymore. And let us say, Amen. And now, get your wine cups or your grape juice cups or whatever you like, and Rabbi Yaffa-Shira will lead us in Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinhilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom tehillah lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, ki banu bacharta, yotanu kidashta, mi'im kol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'yava uvratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. What's better than challah? Maybe latkes for Chanukah. But anyway, happy Chanukah, Shabbat Shalom.
I would like to close with, we would like to close with this reading. In Jewish history, there were times when any other people would have given up in despair after the destruction of the temple, or the massacres of the Crusades, or the Spanish expulsion, or the pogroms, or the Shoah. But somehow Jews did not sit and weep. We gathered what remained, rebuilt our people, and lit a light like no other in history. A light that tells us and the world of the power of the human spirit to overcome every tragedy and refuse to accept defeat. From the days of Moses and the bush that burned and was not consumed, to the days of the Maccabees and the single cruse of oil, Judaism has been humanity's ner tamid, the everlasting light that no power on earth can extinguish. Chanukah, Chanukah, Chag Yafeh Kol Kaf, Misaviv, Misaviv, Gilei Yeled Rach. Chanukah, Chanukah, Chag Yafeh Kol Kaf, Sivivon Sof Sof Sof, Manaim Vatov. Happy Hanukkah. And it was wonderful to be able to participate with Rabbi Levin. Thank you so much. And I wish you all a Sei Gesund.
One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago.